not cheese, but play macro and keep up with the best of them. But I just mentioned a Zerg and a Terran, and that has nothing to do with PvP. So here we go. Spotting in the top left-hand corner of Hardlead, we have the French Protoss player, the Blue Protoss, representing the Platinum Heroes. It is DnS. And spawning in the bottom right-hand corner, we have his opponent. We have the Red Protoss player, representing his, I guess, relatively new team, Maturino Esports. It is the French Protoss. It is Arrogfire. Here we go. And Arrogfire versus DnS. Arrogfire relatively recently joining Maturino Esports. I mean, shout out to Maturino. In the ashes of Alpha X, Maturino Esports did rise up. They picked up a lot of players. They picked up Estrella, Future, as well as Arrogfire as well. And I believe this is the first season of Arrogfire in ESL Masters, just because he recently became of age. Up until recently, he was too young. He could not compete. He could not participate in ESL Masters until now. So yeah, this is going to be a learning experience for him. Obviously, he is an amazing player. He's a damn good player, but this is a new environment for our young Protoss, and we'll see if he can thrive in it. He did struggle a little bit in day one. Day one was rough. If you remember, Arrogfire was playing against Serral on the mainstream, and you don't get more difficult than that as your first match of your first ever ESL Masters season. So it was a little bit brutal going up against Serral, but you know, it gets easier from there. Serral, he is one of the favorites to win the entire event, and I'm sure Arrogfire, he is slowly gaining more experience and gaining more confidence as he goes on, as he gets into the rest of these matches. Meanwhile, DnS, of course, I mentioned before, I would say the ace player of Platinum Heroes. Now that the Platinum Heroes have picked up Firefly, it's debatable whether it's DnS or Firefly now. You could pick either or. Regardless, DnS is still a very strong competitor, and he was a bit of a dark horse, a bit of a wild card at the start of the year. It felt like DnS took some time off. It felt like he's been around for many years, to be honest. He's a name that I recognized from Heart of the Swarm even back in the day. And yeah, it felt like he took a little bit of time off. He kind of eased up here when it comes to competing, but did come back, and he came back strong again in that most recent season of World Team League. As, oh, we have a robot. As we are setting up for a one base soul in from Arrogfire. Oh my god. Okay, no proxy, by the way. There is no proxy. Is going to be a robo first into a third gateway. DnS back at home is expanding, is none the wiser. He's going to try and get a scout off. The Adept does shade in, does confirm the lack of expansion, but he doesn't quite know what is in the main. As we now can focus on the game itself. It was a 2-gate opener from both players. Again, DnS is focusing on his economy, as he usually does. I alluded to it earlier when I was talking about how impressed we were when DnS was playing macro against some of these other big names. DnS usually plays standard, and there it is, a robo follow-up. So this is a defensive robo from DnS designed to get into early game immortal production and defend against all-ins. A very powerful tool here in PvP. Meanwhile, Arrogfire, on the flip side, going into a War Prison first, into 3 gateway production, sending everything across the map, looking to break DnS. It's going to be close. DnS, even though he hasn't seen everything, you can see here that he hasn't seen the third gateway, he hasn't seen the robo, he is piecing this together. 2 shield batteries, soon an overcharge as well. Sentries for force fields, a Guardian shield, he is so well prepared for this. He is looking to be a brick wall, and Arrogfire is looking to try and break it down. Doesn't quite deny the scout. Hallucination, does make it across the map, and we just continue to warp in. Continue to commit. We have an Immortal coming out back at home. A decent force field. There is no blink. No, but we cannot commit. Not yet. DnS, he has the Stalker advantage. We do have a couple more force fields available, and there we go. We do isolate one of those Stalkers, but the shield batteries keep everything alive. Not themselves alive, as one shield battery goes down. But we had a second to take its place, and we have a third on the way. Third shield battery, Immortal arrives, and now with the Immortals, this becomes a much easier hold. I mentioned before, but again, with an early robo like this is the defensive building you want to grant you access to Immortals, and against any kind of gateway army, they are king. They are ideal. Void Rays also have a place in the other game as well. If we went for a Stargate opener, for example. Let's dive into the main base. With that Immortal, we get one Stalker. And we're going for the Pylon. Can we get it? Looks like we barely cannot. DnS trying to pull apart the army of DnS. Goes for the Force Field. Does cut up the army. Oh my god, he catches one. He catches two Stalkers. He forces the overcharge as well. But it looks like DnS is buying enough time. We're running out of Force Fields. That was the last one for now. And that Warp Prism took a lot of hits. Almost goes down. Almost does it go down, but here we go, Arrogfire. There's no turning back from this. There's no expanding. There's no transitioning. And here we go. He does focus down one of the Immortals. Shield batteries are out of energy. There's no overcharge. And Arrogfire, he's breaking on through. The boys, they have to be pulled. Good juggling once again, keeping the Immortals alive. And DnS is hurting. He needs a little bit more time for another overcharge. A little bit more time for that for another shield battery to finish up as well. He has the second Immortal. Good force fields once again. Getting a Stalker, getting in a depth for free. Because of the force fields, these Immortals, they could not fight. They could not be a part of this. We do have an overcharge, and Arrogfire has to respect it. He respects the overcharge, but he bleeds out a lot of units. Here comes another warp in. What's important, the Immortals are still alive. The overcharge runs out. And now we go in again. He catches an Immortal. Gonna be catching a second Immortal as well. And it looks like Arrogfire, I believe he has done it. The Adepts are doing a great job tanking these Immortal shots. Oh my god, we are losing those shields. But once again, the Prism barely survives. It barely keeps the Immortals alive. One Immortal goes down. But that was only one. And Arrogfire, he is snowballing out of control. Depowers the shield batteries. And we are busting into the main base. Again, this Warp Prism did so much here for Arrogfire. Was the MVP. We go for another Warp in. There is no anti-air. The Prism survives. And this Prism was so close to going down as well. That would have changed everything. And DnS, he's just running out. He's running out of steam, running out of units. GG gets called. And Arrogfire will take game number 1. GG. The one thing that DnS was missing there in the defense, we were talking about the Robo, it does give you access to Immortals. It also gives you access to Warp Prisms. And if he were able to sneak out a Warp Prism, then the force fields of Arrogfire would not have been as impactful because we can basically defensive blink. You know, exactly what Arrogfire was doing. He was able to juggle his units and keep them alive. Whenever there was a force field from Arrogfire, basically it was secure damage. It was dead Stalkers or dead Sentries. Units were dying one after the other. They could not be saved because of the force fields. Likewise, that's where the Warp Prism comes into play, and that's where you can kind of micro against your opponents and save those units, preserve your army, and build it up as well. Instead, we did have just massive mortal production instead. And to be fair, it is risky to invest into a Warp Prism because just because it does mean that you're not making another Immortal. So I understand that completely. It is a risk to take, but based on how reliant we were on those sentries, Arrogfire was on those sentries, it may have been a worthwhile investment. That, or just being a little bit more careful with your movements and not being as assertive with how you're pushing out. Respecting the sentries. GG. Regardless, GG, well played. The one base all in. Works out. And Arrogfire does take a lead. Can he extend that lead? Can he go further? Can he take game 2? Or will DnS fight back? I believe in the power of DnS. I want to see an ace match. I want us to go the distance, but it's not on me. It's on this player here. As spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of Hecate, we have the French Protoss player, the blue Protoss, representing the Platinum Heroes, down in this series, but not out. It is DnS. And spawning in the top right-hand corner, we have his opponents. We have the other French Protoss, the red Protoss, representing Maturino Esports, leading the series 1-0 in his first season of ESL Masters. It is Arrogfire. Here we go. Again, I can even see some people in the chat be like, who is Arrogfire? I mean, he's been a very active player in the online tournament scene, that is true. But if you only watch events like ESL Masters, if you only watch Premier events, then you would not be familiar with Arrogfire because he was too young. He's too young back. Mentioned before, this is his first season because he just hasn't been legally allowed to compete because of his age. But alas, that has ticked over. This is his first season, and not looking too bad here against the veteran that is DnS. But here we go. We do have our 2 gateways here from both players, 2 gate openers. Arrogfire, he does send out 1 probe. He could try to throw down his second pylon elsewhere. Try to hide it. Try to get into the head of his opponent. I do think it would be a good move to throw down the pylon. There we go. I do think this is really smart just because you're playing with the series. So game 1, Arrogfire went for 1 base all-in, and it worked, right? He won the game. So now he's faking out a potentially 1 base all-in to his opponent. And this is something that DnS is going to have to take seriously because, I mean, Arrogfire, what do you do at 2 games in a row, potentially? This pylon is hidden. Arrogfire scouts, confirms both pylons in the main base, so he knows that everything is where it should be. And Arrogfire is going to be, just going for a Stalker Sentry opener. There's the 3rd pylon. Probe is still in the main. I'm really interested in SimCity as well from Arrogfire. Do love to see it. Basically, he created like a trench here, which means he has a little bit more time to react to an Adept Shade. It does take an Adept a little bit longer to actually get into the main base, so you do have more time to throw down that wall. As DnS is going to be opening up double Stalker into double Adept. The probe of DnS is going to be scouting the edge of the map, looking for that pylon. Yep, he's sending out his Stalkers as well. So he is on the hunt, convinced that there's a pylon somewhere out there, and if there is, he wants to make sure he's aware of it, aware of what it is. Of course, we can see that the pylon is at the 3rd base of Arrogfire. The Stalkers, they do come back home. Behind this, Arrogfire, again, he did go into 2 more sentries. He's going for the Hallucination Scout. And with this, he will confirm, okay, my opponent is expanding. I should be safe. My opponent is investing into a natural base. We get into the main. We get eyes on the shield battery. This shield battery tells us that DnS is a bit, he's afraid of a proxy Stargate, like potential oracles, or even a Stargate opener in general. Oh, as we do have an Adept taking a lot of extra hits. Oh my god. Likewise, it looks like we're going to be trading a Sentry for a Stalker. So we do barely pull back. Speaking of oracles, we do have 1 on the way for DnS. Did go for a Stargate opener himself. Arrogfire, he did scout it. He is in position. He has Stalkers in the main. As despite that, the Oracle finds damage in the natural instead. Oh god! Not like this! As the Oracle goes down, it flies too close to the sun. 3 workers for 1 Oracle. A good trade for Arrogfire. Bit of a blunder there from DnS, just getting a little bit too greedy. Not respecting his opponent's units enough. Now he is getting into a 2nd Oracle, and there's potential. There's potential to do some counter damage and to catch up. But, again, the Oracle, the tech here is quite expensive. It does delay blink. And to only get 3 probes, that is not worthwhile. But here we go. 2nd Oracle moving towards the main base. There is no shield battery. Adepts try to shade in. They are denied. With the death of that probe, we can try to go for another shade, but Arrogfire very quick to replace it. He is in position. As we could just go straight for the natural instead. Yeah, we do commit. We go for the natural, but the Adepts are so low. 1 goes down already. And so will the other. A good cleanup here from Arrogfire. He's got a 3rd base on the way. Likewise, so does DnS. But DnS's, again, was quite a bit later than his opponent. So DnS, he's 1 step behind when it comes to 3rd base timing. He's 1 step behind when it comes to his blink. We are even in workers, even slightly ahead for DnS. But the 3rd base will make up for that. And again, there is still potential for DnS to get a couple more probe kills. He still has this Oracle alive. He could still get damage done, especially considering that there is no shield battery. So if Arrogfire is ever out of position, Probes will fall. Meanwhile, behind this, we have our follow-up here into the mid-game. We have a Robo Forge for +1 and potentially Immortal Production or just a War Prism to reinforce. Observers, of course, just in case there are Dark Templar. Oh. Oracle has been spotted. Arrogfire going to be able to rotate around. So DnS going to be marauding out here with his Stalkers. If his Oracle can maybe pull the army out of position, then that will create an opening here for DnS. As he has a pretty comparable army size. Oh, but he has been spotted. He has been seen. Yeah, and as Arrogfire gets distracted, here we go. DnS, he dives in. Gets one probe. Gets a second. It's something. It's damage. 2 workers and the Oracle does back up. Behind the DnS, he's working towards charge, going for a gateway explosion +1 of his own. I'm a little bit surprised that Arrogfire actually hasn't invested, and he hasn't gone into charge himself. He's just committing to a purely Blinkstalker army, which is a thing, don't get me wrong. Like, it is a thing, but it's, you know, the quality here of the army isn't as high as it otherwise could be, and DnS could try to take advantage of that. Again, Zealots, they do have their role in PvP. But before charge is done, Arrogfire is pushing out. Arrogfire, he does have a Stalker lead. He has the War Prism. He's looking to hit with +1. A very strong timing here for the Red Protoss. And DnS, he's not ready for this. Again, his upgrades are later. Charge is later. He's working in Immortals. He's working on the Templar Archives for Archons. But Arrogfire, he's not waiting. He's not waiting for DnS, not waiting for those upgrades. He's pushing in. We have slow lots to defend. They're going to tank some shots. They will be tanking some shots. Overcharge comes into play as well. DnS trying to hold on, but the Concave is insane. Oh my god. As Arrogfire has a massive Stalker lead, 28-13, and Arrogfire, he's pushing on through. He's overwhelming the army. Again, a very strong timing behind this. The Oracle getting damage done at the natural, but it doesn't even matter as Arrogfire dives on the forces of DnS. The boys are being pulled. Can we barely hold on? Arrogfire retreating back to that War Prism. The War Prism is going to go down. And DnS will hold. A costly hold, though. He loses 14, 15, 17 probes. Arrogfire takes it. He doesn't even need a 4th, but he takes it. Takes the 4th base. Now, a scary moment here is as we just shave off whatever we can. Arrogfire, he can just keep on pushing. I was gonna say that if Arrogfire backs off, then DnS, he gets away with Archons, he gets away with Immortals. Like we saw this with Papi versus Showdown earlier, where the quality of the army is just becoming that much greater. But Arrogfire has an insane economy. Is the stasis trap up? Massive stasis here, buying so much time for DnS, which means he can get away with this 4th. Here we go. The Prism goes down for a 2nd time. The War Prism will fall, but a 4th base is up here for DnS. Bear that in mind. The Stalker count's still looking insane. If we had the War Prism, we could reinforce. If we had the War Prism, we could maybe even kill DnS. So far, the Blinks are looking good. We have forced the Warp in back at home. A 3rd War Prism on the way. We need to take care of them, Pap. We need to take care. As DnS, he has more breathing room. Dark Shrine on the way. Do we have detection? Uh-oh, we do not. Arrogfire does not have an observer. Blinking on forward, but alas, his Stalkers are very low. Very battered, very bruised. Again, Arrogfire, he was essentially all in earlier. He has +2, he's working on +3. Here comes the first Dark Templar. Moving across the map. We have cannons on the way, but no observers. I am worried here for Arrogfire. Like, he still has an overwhelming army. Like, he still has enough to push in. And hopefully enough time to make an observer. So here we go. He collapses on the 4th base. We have defensive DTs. Despite the overwhelming army, the DTs will eventually clean this up when we get on top of the Immortal, get on top of the army. Across the map, probes are going down. And the Observer's on the way. DnS is going to be losing his entire army. Only DTs remain. And we can't deal with them. We have to retreat. We have to head towards the third. Looking for another mineral line. Yeah, and GG gets called. It's just too much. DnS had nothing left other than the Invisible Man.